Hey there. Today I have a little devotional talk to finish up my series on hope. Been trying to convey the idea that we can endure through hardships when we have an expectation that this world isn't our final destination. We can endure some things because we believe there's something better waiting for us. It's going to be way better and it's going to last forever. And we can stop worrying about this life so much, relax a little bit, because this is all small stuff. I'm not saying that we're slackers. The parable of the three servants shows us that God expects us to do something with the gifts and talents He's given us while He's away. And if we just hide that stuff and wait for Him to return, He's not going to be all that satisfied or happy with us. So we're doing the best we can with what we've got until He returns. It's the same as going to school or going on a business trip. This isn't a vacation. We're not trying to just catch the rays. We're trying to be productive. The difference is we're not trying to attain the pleasures of this world. We're trying to invest in the world to come. And this mindset helps us when things don't go our way. I've been basing my last few talks on Hebrews 10 and 11, what many call the Hall of Faith. It talks about all the things people endured and overcame and accomplished because they believed in something better. I have one more verse that I'd like to highlight, and it gives the reason we can have this faith and have this hope. It's Hebrews 11:16. But they were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. This is why God is not ashamed to be called their God, for He has prepared a city for them. God is not ashamed to be called their God. That's the focus of what I want to talk about today. Because sometimes we're ashamed of each other, and more often we're ashamed of ourselves. Moments, plenty of them, when we look in the mirror and we say, "You ought to be a better person by now." Who hasn't felt like that? I think we all wish, at least once in a while, that we were better than we are. I wish I was a better person by now. You had this experience, you asked for forgiveness, and then you did it again. You lost your temper, you try not to, you ate too much, said something unkind about a friend, you broke a promise, tried to cover it up, blamed someone else for your own problems, that's a classic. Exaggerate to make yourself look good, couldn't stop complaining, you didn't do your devotions, you didn't pray like you know you should, you sinned and you tried to keep it a secret, or you have secret sins you're covering up, you're harsh with your family, you broke your vows to God. If you look in the mirror long enough, you're bound to feel bad about yourself if you're really honest. Romans 3:23 applies to everybody, saved or not, for all have sinned and fall short of God's glory. And that's why Martin Luther stressed justification by faith as a chief doctrine. It's our only hope of heaven. If we plan to make it by being good enough, we're just not going to get there. There's just no way. So how is it that God is not ashamed of us when we can often be so ashamed of ourselves? It has to do entirely with grace, doesn't it? I read about a pastor in his early 30s who was diagnosed with cancer, and I guess there's a book called Surprised by Death that tells his story. I haven't read it, but I just read somebody who had read it. The diagnosis was he didn't have long to live. Nothing they could do about it. So for as long as he was able, he continued to preach, and he began to see something in a different light, and he shared this with his congregation. And he said something like, when you start out in the Christian life, you realize that you have a long way to go. But you think to yourself, I got a lifetime to grow in grace. Even though you'll never reach perfection in this life, you assume that over the years you're going to get much closer to God. And while you struggle with various sins and bad habits and whatever, you think, someday I'm going to be a better person. That's what we say, isn't it, when someone points out a flaw in our lives? I'm working on that. Which means just, give me some time and I'm going to get better. I'm sure I'll get better at it. So just please be patient. But what if you don't live long enough to get any better? What if you aren't even close to what you wanted to be? That's the dilemma this young pastor faced. And it brought an epiphany to his life, a new point of view, a revelation. One day he realized, he said, I'm not going to live long enough to get any better. I'm going to have to die the way I am right now. And that's a sobering truth. You look at the scoreboard, you thought you were in the middle of the second quarter with plenty of time left in the game. Suddenly you realize there's only 20 seconds left in the fourth, and it's ticking down. I had a similar sort of feeling when our high school basketball team made it to provincials. We lost our first game of the tournament. The opponent took us by surprise, and all our usual defenses didn't work against them. And as the game was winding down, I was thinking, that's okay, we'll get them next time. But then I found out there wasn't going to be a next time. We were knocked out of the championship. The best we could hope for was the consolation prize, even if we won all the rest of our games. That was a huge disappointment. You might feel that way. We've already lost. There's no getting back into the game. There's no hope of winning at this point. It's just too late for me. Well, what do you do then? In life, it's either the grace of God or it's nothing at all. That's where Romans 5:8 really hit home with this pastor. It says, but God demonstrated his love for us, his own love towards us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Some other translations will put the word still there instead of yet. They both mean the same thing. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And that word still is a tiny Greek word, eti, and I think you say eti, and it applies to every one of us. We are all still yet sinners. The dying pastor got up and he said something along these lines. I realized for the first time that I'm going to go to heaven because of that little Greek word, eti. I am still a sinner, and I don't have any time to get better. And when I die, I'm resting my hope on the fact that Christ died for me while I was still a sinner. That's the gospel. That's what it means to be saved. That's the foundation for this series of talks on hope. All of us who believe, even the best among us, we have so far to go that we're never going to live long enough to get there on our own. We are never going to be good enough, no matter how long we are able to live. Someone else has to do the work for us. Lewis Sperry Schaefer said that believing in Jesus means trusting in him so much that if he can't take me to heaven, I'm not going to get there. And I like that. Believing in Jesus means risking it all on him. I don't have a plan B. Jesus is my only hope of heaven. And even though I feel ashamed of myself sometimes, and maybe a lot of times, the Bible tells me this, Romans 10:11. Anyone who trusts in him will never be disgraced. And some translations say they will not be ashamed. Trusting in Jesus is the one of the things I will never be ashamed of. I'm putting all my marbles in this basket. Jesus is the only way I'm getting to heaven. And if he can't get me there, I'm not going to make it. And my text says, Hebrews 11:16, God is not ashamed of those kind of people. They were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. That is why God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. God is not ashamed to be the God of very imperfect people who put their trust in him. He never looks down from heaven and says, you're such a loser. I'm through with you. There you go again. How could you forget it? I'm done with you. He's not ashamed to be the God of those who put their trust in him. And isn't that a relief? Doesn't that give you some hope? Anyone who says, I'm not ashamed of this good news that Jesus and Jesus alone saves, and believes in Jesus as risen Lord and Savior, God says to them, I'm not ashamed of you. I'm not ashamed to be called your God, and I've got a city prepared for you. When you look up and you say, you are my God, God looks down and says, yes, I am your God. I accept all you imperfect people because you believe in my Son to save you, and he won't let you down. There's no God like our God. There's no Savior like our Jesus. He doesn't judge us by what we are, but by what he's done for us and whether or not we accept it. He's destined us for heaven, and no matter how many mistakes we may make along the way, his grace is more than enough to cover all of them. He intends to take all his redeemed children to heaven. Not one of them will fail to make it. Some of us might run there triumphantly. Others of us might stumble across the finish line. But by the grace of God, we will prevail because God is not ashamed to be our God. Patty Davis said, as far as false hope, there's no such thing. There's only hope or the absence of hope. Nothing else. That's it. This is hope right here. God is not ashamed to be your God if you're not ashamed to ask Jesus to save you. This is not false hope. This is true hope today. You either have this hope or you just don't have hope. Ask Jesus to save you. Start looking forward to a better home and a better place when this life is over. And I'm going to quote Lois Lane of all people, or whoever wrote Lois Lane. She took a popular quote and adds a few thoughts. Darkness. The truest darkness is not the absence of light. It is the conviction that the light will never return. But the light always returns to show us things familiar. Our darkness was deep and soon to swallow all hope. But hope is real. You can feel it. All you have to do is look. Comic book wisdom. Take a look. Take a look at Jesus. Read what he said and did in Mark, Luke, or John. This is hope. Real hope in a world full of despair, and he can save you, and he can set you free, and he can give you something to live for in this world today. Take a look at Jesus, because hope is real. There's no such thing as false hope. There's just hope or rejecting the hope. And so I'm saying to you, take a look at Jesus and receive that hope. He's not ashamed of you when you call on him. He'll take you home to heaven. God bless you. Have a great day.